The morning sun rose over New Eden like it had for the past 15 years since humans first settled on the green world. Sarah Chen walked through the wheat fields that stretched beyond the horizon, checking the growth of crops that would feed 3 million colonists. The air smelled of fresh earth and growing things. Children's laughter echoed from the nearby school, where her daughter Emma learned alongside kids from dozens of different Earth nations. New Eden was everything humanity had dreamed of when they first looked up at the stars. The planet sat in the perfect zone around its yellow sun, with clean water, breathable air, and soil that grew Earth crops better than Earth itself. No wars had touched this world. No pollution darkened its skies. Here, humans lived in peace, with nature and each other. The colony had grown slowly but steadily. Farmers like Sarah grew food. Engineers built clean cities powered by fusion reactors. Scientists studied the unique plant and animal life. Artists created works inspired by alien sunsets. Teachers educated the next generation of humans who would know no other home than this peaceful world. Governor Marcus Webb stood on his office balcony in New Geneva, the colony's capital city. He watched hover cars move quietly through tree-lined streets. Parks and gardens filled every available space. The city planners had learned from Earth's mistakes. No concrete jungles here, no choking smog. Just clean lines and green spaces where humans could live in harmony with their new world. Webb's assistant, David Park, joined him on the balcony with the daily reports. "Agricultural output is up 3% this quarter," Park said. "The new families from the Luna colonies are settling in well, and the university just published another research paper on the local ecosystem." Webb nodded, feeling proud of what they had built. "Any word from Earth Command about our request for more medical supplies?" "Still processing. You know how the bureaucracy works back home. They're not in any hurry to help us out here on the frontier." That was true. Earth's government saw the outer colonies as expensive investments that took decades to pay off. They provided the minimum support required by law and no more. Most colonies had to be self-sufficient within a few years or risk being abandoned. But New Eden was different. The planet was so perfect for human life that it almost seemed designed for them. Crops grew easily. The weather was mild. No dangerous. Predators threatened the settlements. Even the local bacteria were harmless to human biology. It was as if nature itself welcomed humanity to this world. The peace was broken by a sound no one on New Eden had ever heard before, the shriek of atmospheric entry at combat speed. Sarah looked up from her wheat fields to see burning streaks across the blue sky. At first she thought they were meteors, but meteors didn't change direction. These objects were slowing down, adjusting their paths, heading for specific targets. Governor Webb's emergency communicator buzzed with incoming calls from every settlement on the planet. "Sir, we have multiple unknown objects entering our atmosphere," reported Captain Lisa Rodriguez from the colony's small security force. "They're not responding to our communication attempts." "Pirates?" Webb asked, though he knew it was unlikely. New Eden had little worth stealing except agricultural products, and those were too bulky for quick raids. "Unknown, sir. They're too big to be pirate ships. These look like military vessels." Webb felt ice form in his stomach. The outer colonies had no enemies. Human space was generally peaceful, with only minor conflicts between corporations or the occasional pirate raid. No one had any reason to attack a farming colony that posed no threat to anyone. The first ships landed near New Geneva. They were sleek, silver vessels shaped like teardrops, each one the size of a city block. Weapons ports opened along their hulls as they settled onto the carefully maintained parks that surrounded the capital. More ships landed at every major settlement across the planet. The aliens inside were tall and thin, with pale blue skin and large black eyes. They wore form-fitting armor that shimmered like liquid metal. Energy weapons hummed in their hands as they emerged from their ships. The Zaphirians had arrived. Their leader, War Commander Thexka, stepped onto New Eden's soil and breathed the clean air through his environmental suit. His species had evolved on a high-gravity desert world where the air was thin and poisonous. This lush garden planet disgusted him with its abundance of life. Establish a perimeter around all major population centers, he ordered his subordinates through their neural communication network. Begin the cleansing protocol. This world will serve the Empire's needs, but first, it must be purified of the infestation. The Zaphirian Empire controlled 47 star systems in this region of the galaxy. They were conquerors by nature, viewing other species as obstacles to their expansion. When their scouts had discovered this human colony on such a perfect world, the Empire's leaders had decided that the planet would serve them better without its current inhabitants. Governor Webb tried to make contact with the alien ships. This is Governor Marcus Webb of the New Eden colony. You are in violation of galactic peace accords by landing armed vessels without permission. Please identify yourselves and state your intentions. The response came not in words, but in action. Energy beams lanced out from the alien weapons, striking the colony's communication center and reducing it to molten slag. The governor's last transmission to Earth was cut off mid-sentence. Sarah Chen was running toward the settlement's emergency shelter when the first energy blasts hit the residential district. Buildings that had stood for 15 years vanished in flashes of superheated plasma. The wheat fields where she had worked that morning were burning, the smoke rising like funeral pyres into the afternoon sky. She found Emma at the school, where teachers were trying to evacuate the children to underground shelters that had been built for natural disasters, not alien invasions. The little girl was crying, asking where the bad sounds were coming from and why the sky was the wrong color. "It's going to be okay, baby," Sarah whispered, knowing it was a lie. Through the school's windows, she could see the alien soldiers, moving methodically through the streets. They weren't interested in taking prisoners or demanding surrender. They were simply eliminating every human they found. Dr. Robert Harrison, the colony's chief medical officer, was in his hospital when the attacks began. He had dedicated his life to healing, to preserving human life in the hostile environment of space. Now he watched through the medical center's windows as energy weapons turned his patients into vapor and ash. He activated the hospital's emergency protocols, sending out automated distress signals to any human ships that might be in range. But New Eden was on the frontier, days away from the nearest major shipping route. By the time help arrived, there would be nothing left to save. The massacre continued through the day and into the night. The Zaphirians were thorough and efficient. They had done this before on other worlds to other species. Their weapons were designed to leave no trace of organic matter, reducing living beings to their component atoms and scattering them on the wind. By dawn of the second day, the killing was done. 3 million humans who had lived and loved and dreamed on New Eden were gone. The cities stood empty, their streets littered with the debris of interrupted lives. Children's toys lay abandoned in yards where no children would ever play again. War. Commander Thexka surveyed the cleansed world from his command ship's observation deck. The planet was still beautiful, still perfect for supporting life. Soon, Zaphirian colonists would arrive to claim this garden world for the Empire. They would build new cities according to their architectural preferences and plant crops suited to their biology. The humans had been nothing more than an infestation to be removed. They were a young species, barely spreading beyond their own star system. They had no empire, no great fleets, no allies to avenge them. The Zaphirian intelligence reports indicated that humanity was peaceful and weak, more interested in farming and commerce than warfare. Thexka filed his mission report with satisfaction. Another world had been added to the Empire's holdings. Another inferior species had been removed from the galaxy's evolutionary path. The humans of New Eden would be forgotten within a generation, remembered only as a footnote in Zaphirian expansion records. But the war commander had made one critical error in his assessment of humanity. The people of New Eden had indeed been peaceful farmers and scientists and teachers. They had posed no threat to anyone. They had wanted nothing more than to live quiet lives on their beautiful world. However, they had not been alone in the universe, and the family they had left behind on distant Earth was about to learn of their fate. The automated distress beacon from Dr. Harrison's hospital continued transmitting long after its sender was dead. The signal traveled through hyperspace, carrying its message of tragedy across the light years to Earth. When it finally reached the Sol system, it was picked up by a routine monitoring station and forwarded to the appropriate authorities. Admiral Janet Foster was eating breakfast in her quarters aboard the dreadnought Terra's Fury when the message reached her. She had been humanity's top military commander for 12 years, though there had been little need for her skills in the peaceful decades since the last corporate war. Humanity's military existed mainly to deter pirates and show the flag in remote systems. She read the distress signal 3 times before the full meaning sank in. New Eden was gone. 3 million civilians murdered by an alien empire that humanity had never encountered before. Men, women, and children wiped out not in war, but in what could only be called genocide. Foster had been born on New Eden, though her family had moved to Earth when she was very young. She still remembered the smell of those wheat fields and the sound of wind through the tall grass. Now it was all ashes and memory. She activated her personal communicator and sent a priority message to Earth Defense Command. "This is Admiral Foster requesting immediate counsel with the Joint Chiefs. We have a situation that requires the full attention of human military leadership." The message that had reached Earth would soon trigger a response that the Zaphirian Empire could never have imagined. For while the colonists of New Eden had been peaceful and defenseless, their cousins in the Sol system had spent the past several decades preparing for exactly this kind of threat. Humanity's military had been built not for conquest, but for protection. And now, for the first time in generations, they would have a chance to fulfill their primary purpose, defending human life against those who would destroy it. The emergency session of Earth's Joint Chiefs of Staff convened in the deep bunkers beneath Geneva. Admiral Janet Foster stood before the holographic display showing the last known positions of New Eden's settlements, now marked with red symbols, indicating total destruction. The room was silent except for the hum of air recyclers and the quiet breathing of humanity's top military leaders. General William Torres, head of Earth's ground forces, was the first to speak. 3 million civilians, gone in less than 48 hours. His voice carried decades of military experience, but Foster could hear the shock underneath. They had all prepared for war, but not for genocide. "What do we know about these Zaphirians?" asked Admiral Chen Wu, commander of the Outer System fleets. Her ships were the farthest from Earth, patrolling the edge of human space, where pirates sometimes raided commercial vessels. Foster activated the holographic display, showing the intelligence data they had gathered from New Eden's final transmissions. The attackers used energy weapons of unknown design. Their ships show technology roughly equivalent to our own, but their tactics were those of exterminators, not conquerors. They weren't interested in taking prisoners or demanding surrender. Fleet Admiral Sarah Reynolds, the highest-ranking officer in human space, studied the alien ship designs with professional interest. Any demands? Territorial claims? Communication attempts? None. They landed. They killed everything human on the planet, and according to our long-range sensors, they're now setting up permanent installations. Foster's hands clenched into fists. This wasn't a raid or a territorial dispute. It was murder. The room fell silent again as the implications sank in. Humanity had spent decades building colonies throughout their region of space. Each world held millions of lives, farmers, scientists, families who had left Earth seeking new opportunities among the stars. If the Zaphirians continued their expansion, Those colonies would all face the same fate as New Eden. Director Maria Santos from Intelligence Division cleared her throat. Our deep space sensors have detected Zaphirian fleet movements in 3 nearby systems. They're not stopping with New Eden. This appears to be the beginning of a systematic campaign to claim human territory. General Torres pulled up tactical displays of human colonies within 50 light-years of New Eden. We have 17 major settlements in that region, combined population of nearly 40 million people. If these aliens continue their expansion pattern, they'll reach the next colony within 6 weeks. Admiral Foster had been quiet during the briefing, but now she stepped forward. Recommendations? Evacuation, said Admiral Wu immediately. Pull back our civilians to the core systems where we can protect them. That's 40 million people, protested General Torres. The logistics alone would take months. And where would we put them? Most of those colonies exist because Earth and Mars are overcrowded. Fleet Admiral Reynolds had been studying the strategic displays with the cold calculation that made her humanity's top naval commander. Evacuation might not be possible anyway. Look at the Zaphirian expansion pattern. They're not just taking random worlds, they're positioning to cut off our escape routes. If we wait much longer, those colonies will be trapped. Director Santos activated another display showing intelligence estimates of Zaphirian military strength. Based on the fleet movements we've observed, they have at least 200 major warships in this region. That's comparable to our entire active navy. The numbers were daunting, but Admiral Foster had not reached her position by backing down from difficult odds. She had spent her career preparing for exactly this kind of threat. An enemy that sought not just victory, but the complete elimination of human presence in space. What about the preparation protocols? She asked quietly. The room went completely silent. Every person present knew about the preparation protocols, but none of them had ever expected to use them. For 30 years, humanity had been secretly developing military technologies far beyond what they revealed to the galaxy. The peaceful facade maintained by Earth's government concealed a military-industrial complex that had never stopped innovating. Fleet Admiral Reynolds was the first to respond. The shipyards at Titan have completed the new Dreadnought class, 12 ships, each one capable of engaging a fleet of conventional vessels, but they've never been tested in actual combat. The Ghost Fleet is operational, added Admiral Wu. 47 ships equipped with full stealth capability. They can strike without being detected until it's too late. General Torres consulted his personal datapad. The orbital strike platforms around Earth and Mars have been upgraded with the new kinetic weapons, range of 50 light-years, accuracy, within 10 meters, and the Special Forces units have been training with the new powered armor for the past 5 years. Director Santos looked uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation. Those technologies were developed as deterrents. Using them in actual warfare could escalate conflicts throughout the galaxy. Admiral Foster turned to face the intelligence director. The Zaphirians have already escalated to genocide. 3 million humans are dead with 40 million more in immediate danger. This isn't about galactic politics anymore, it's about survival. The debate continued for hours as they examined every option, every possible course of action. Diplomacy was impossible. The Zaphirians had not even attempted communication before beginning their extermination campaign. Evacuation was impractical. Too many people, too little time, and the enemy was already moving to cut off escape routes. That left only one option: war. Fleet Admiral Reynolds activated the command protocols that had never been used in peacetime. I'm authorizing the mobilization of all reserve fleets and the activation of the preparation protocol assets. Admiral Foster, you'll command the expeditionary force. Your mission is to stop the Zaphirian expansion and secure our colonies. Foster accepted the assignment with grim determination. Rules of engagement? The Zaphirians have shown they have no interest in prisoner exchanges or civilian protections, Reynolds replied. They've chosen total war. We'll give them exactly what they asked for. The orders went out within hours, transmitted on encrypted channels to military installations throughout human space. On Mars, the orbital shipyards began final preparations on warships that had existed only in classified blueprints. In the asteroid belt, mining stations activated secondary functions as weapons manufacturing facilities. On Earth itself, fusion. Reactors hummed to life in underground complexes that officially did not exist. Admiral Foster stood in the command center of Terra's Fury as her ship underwent rapid modifications. The dreadnought had been designed to look like a standard heavy cruiser to outside observers, but hidden compartments throughout the vessel held weapons systems that could devastate entire fleets. Now those weapons were being brought online for the first time. Captain James Morrison, Foster's longtime aide, approached with the latest reports. All ships in Battle Group Alpha are reporting ready for deployment. The Ghost Fleet is moving into position for preliminary reconnaissance, and intelligence has confirmed that the Zaphirians are indeed advancing toward the Proxima colony. Foster studied the tactical displays showing human space. Hundreds of worlds, billions of lives, all depending on decisions made in the next few hours. What's our force strength for the initial engagement? 12 dreadnoughts of the new class, 37 standard battleships, 64 cruisers, and the 47 ships of the Ghost Fleet. Total firepower equivalent to approximately 300 conventional warships. The numbers were impressive, but Admiral Foster knew that firepower alone would not determine the outcome of this war. The Zaphirians had experience in conquest, while humanity had known only peace for decades. But humans had one advantage that no alien empire could match. They were fighting for their families, their homes, their very survival. Dr. Elizabeth Kane, head of the Weapons Development Division, joined the briefing via secure hologram from her laboratory on Titan. Admiral, the new weapons systems are performing within expected parameters. The kinetic bombardment platforms are ready for long-range strikes, and the energy weapons on your ships are capable of penetrating any known defensive technology. What about the alien weapons we observed at New Eden? Foster asked. Similar to our older designs, but less efficient. Their energy output is approximately 60% of our current generation weapons. However, we should assume they have additional capabilities we haven't observed yet. Foster nodded. Military intelligence was always incomplete, especially when dealing with an unknown enemy. How long until we can reach the next target system? Captain Morrison consulted the navigation computers. The Proxima colony is 6 days away at maximum speed, but our long-range sensors indicate the Zaphirians are already en route. We might arrive to find the same situation as New Eden. The Admiral felt the familiar weight of command decisions that would affect millions of lives. Every hour of delay meant more civilians at risk, but rushing in blindly could result in the destruction of humanity's main fleet. She needed intelligence, tactical advantage, and above all, she needed to ensure that the Zaphirians would never again catch humans unprepared. "Deploy the Ghost Fleet immediately," she ordered. "I want them in the Proxima system within 4 days. Their mission is reconnaissance and harassment. Make the aliens aware they're being watched, but don't engage unless the colony is under immediate attack." "And the main fleet?" Morrison asked. Foster turned back to the tactical displays, her mind already working through dozens of scenarios and contingencies. "We proceed to Proxima, but not alone. Send messages to every human settlement within 20 light years. Tell them to prepare their defenses and send any ships they can spare to join us. The Zaphirians want to face a weak, divided humanity. Instead, they're going to face everything we've got." The orders were transmitted throughout human space on quantum communication networks that the aliens couldn't intercept. On frontier worlds, militia units activated emergency protocols and began converting civilian ships into makeshift warships. In the core systems, reserve officers reported for duty, and shipyard workers began around-the-clock shifts to complete every vessel under construction. For the first time in decades, humanity was mobilizing for war. But this would not be the limited conflicts of the past, fought over trade routes or territorial disputes. This was a war for survival, and humans would fight with the desperation and fury of a species facing extinction. The Zaphirian war commander Thexka was reviewing colonization plans for New Eden when his fleet's sensors detected unusual activity in nearby human space. Ships were moving with military precision, converging on strategic positions. Communication traffic had increased dramatically, though the aliens could not decode the encryption. His intelligence officers had assured him that humanity was a young, peaceful species with limited military capability. They had never fought a major war, never faced a technological superior enemy. The destruction of New Eden should have terrified them into submission. Instead, the humans appeared to be preparing for battle. Thexka studied the tactical displays with growing unease. The human ships his scouts had observed were larger than expected, and they moved with a coordination that suggested extensive military training. Perhaps the intelligence reports had underestimated their opponents, but it was too late to reconsider the campaign now. The Empire had committed significant resources to claiming this region of space, and Thexka's career depended on successful completion of the mission. If the humans wanted to fight, they would quickly learn why the Zaphirian Empire controlled 47 star systems. He ordered his fleets to accelerate toward their next target. The human colony at Proxima would fall within days, and with it, any hope the species might have of mounting effective resistance. But as the Zaphirian armadas moved through space toward their next victims, they were being watched. Ships that didn't appear on any sensors followed their movements, recording their formations, analyzing their capabilities, and reporting everything back to Admiral Foster's command. The Ghost Fleet had arrived, and humanity's real response to the massacre at New Eden was about to begin. Captain Elena Vasquez watched the Zaphirian fleet approach through the sensors of her stealth ship, Shadow's Edge. The alien vessels moved in tight formation, their silver hulls gleaming in the light of Proxima's star. There were 32 ships in the attack force, more than enough to repeat the massacre they had carried out at New Eden. Below them, the human colony of Proxima went about its daily business, unaware that death was approaching from the stars. 2 million people lived. On the desert world, terraforming engineers and miners who had spent decades making the harsh planet suitable for human life. Their children played in domed cities while their parents worked to expand the growing oases of green in the red wilderness. Admiral Foster is requesting immediate tactical assessment, reported Lieutenant Commander Sarah Park from the communications station. The Ghost Fleet maintained constant contact with the main human battle group, still 2 days away at maximum speed. Vasquez studied the alien formations through her ship's advanced sensors. The Ghost Fleet's stealth technology was humanity's greatest secret, ships that could become completely invisible to any known detection method. For 5 years, these vessels had practiced operating in complete concealment, preparing for exactly this kind of mission. Transmit to Admiral Foster, Vasquez ordered. Zaphirian fleet consists of 32 vessels. Configuration suggests planetary. Assault pattern identical to New Eden. Estimated time to attack commencement is 6 hours. The response came back within minutes. Implement harassment protocol. Do not allow civilian casualties. Main fleet ETA 38 hours. Vasquez smiled grimly. The harassment protocol was designed to disrupt enemy operations without revealing the true capabilities of human military technology. The Zaphirians were about to discover that their victims could fight back. All ships, this is Shadow Leader, she transmitted to the other stealth vessels positioned throughout the system. Begin Phase 1 operations. Remember, we want them confused and angry, not dead. Not yet. The first indication War Commander Thexka had of trouble was when his flagship's navigation computer began reporting phantom contacts. Sensor ghosts appeared and disappeared at the edge of detection range, sometimes showing as asteroids, sometimes as ships, sometimes as nothing at all. Technical malfunction? He asked his sensors officer. Unknown, Commander. All systems are functioning within normal parameters, but the contact patterns are inconsistent with any known phenomenon. Thexka frowned. His ships used the most advanced detection systems in the Zaphirian Empire, capable of tracking objects across millions of kilometers of space. Navigation computers had triple redundancy to prevent exactly this kind of error. Implement full sensor sweep of the system. I want every piece of debris larger than a pebble cataloged and tracked. The sweeps revealed nothing unusual. The Proxima system appeared to contain only the human colony, its orbital installations, and the normal collection of asteroids and space debris found around any inhabited world. But the phantom contacts continued, appearing randomly throughout the fleet's formation. Captain Vasquez watched the alien response with professional satisfaction. The Ghost Fleet's ships carried sophisticated sensor jammers designed to create exactly this kind of confusion. The Zaphirians were wasting time and energy chasing shadows, while the human battle group drew closer to the system. Shadow 7 reports. Successful penetration of the enemy communications net, Lieutenant Commander Park announced. We're intercepting their tactical chatter. That was another advantage of humanity's intelligence preparation. For months, automated probes had studied Zaphirian communication protocols, learning their languages and encryption methods. Now, human computers could translate alien orders in real time. What are they saying? Vasquez asked. The fleet commander is reporting navigation difficulties to his superiors. He's requesting technical support from their base ships. Vasquez nodded. Phase 1 was working perfectly. Initiate Phase 2. Signal all ships to begin electronic warfare operations. Throughout, the Zaphirian fleet's sophisticated systems began to malfunction in subtle ways. Navigation computers developed slight errors in their calculations. Communication arrays suffered from intermittent static. Weapon targeting systems reported false locks and phantom targets. None of the problems were serious enough to disable the ships, but they created a constant stream of minor crises that required attention from technical crews. The aliens found themselves troubleshooting equipment that had worked perfectly for years, searching for problems that existed only in carefully crafted electronic interference. War Commander Thexka was growing increasingly frustrated as reports flooded in from throughout his fleet. 17 ships are now reporting navigation anomalies, 23 have communication difficulties, and our long-range sensors are detecting what appear to be human military transmissions, but we cannot locate their source. His intelligence officer, Sub-Commander Veltar, studied the pattern of malfunctions with growing unease. Commander, these failures are too widespread to be coincidental, and the timing suggests deliberate interference. You're suggesting the humans have some kind of electronic warfare capability? It's possible, sir. Our intelligence on their technology may be incomplete. Thexka considered this possibility. Intelligence reports had indicated that humanity was decades behind Zaphirian technology, but those reports might have been based on what the humans chose to reveal publicly. Military forces throughout the galaxy often concealed their true capabilities until war forced them into the open. Accelerate the attack schedule, he ordered. I want all ships in assault position within 2 hours. Whatever the humans are doing, it ends when their colony burns. Captain Vasquez received the translation of the Zaphirian orders and immediately contacted Admiral Foster. Shadow Leader to Battle Group Alpha. Enemy has accelerated attack schedule. Time to assault is now 2 hours. The response was immediate and decisive. Authorization granted for Phase 3 operations. Weapons free on military targets only. Vasquez felt a surge of satisfaction. Phase 3 meant the Ghost Fleet could finally reveal what human military technology was really capable of. All ships, this is Shadow Leader. We are weapons free for precision strikes. Target their communications and navigation systems only. Make them blind and deaf, but keep them alive to tell their friends what happened here. The first Zaphirian ship to suffer a malfunction was the destroyer Sectra, positioned on the fleet's outer perimeter. Its crew was attempting to recalibrate. their navigation sensors, when a precisely targeted energy beam struck their communication array. The attack lasted less than a second and came from a direction where their sensors detected no enemy presence. The beam was surgical in its precision, destroying only the communication system while leaving the rest of the ship undamaged. The crew found themselves cut off from the fleet, unable to report what had happened or request assistance. Similar attacks struck throughout the Zaphirian formation over the next hour. Communication arrays vanished in flashes of precisely targeted energy. Navigation sensors were burned out by focused electromagnetic pulses. Weapon systems suffered mysterious power failures that left them unable to target or fire. War Commander Thexka watched his fleet fall apart around him as ship after ship went silent. His tactical displays showed vessels dropping out of formation, their crews struggling with systems that had been rendered useless by an enemy they could not see or detect. "How many ships have we lost?" he demanded. "None destroyed, Commander," his tactical officer reported, "but 17 vessels are now combat ineffective due to systems failures, and we still cannot locate the source of the attacks." Thexka stared at the tactical display in disbelief. An invisible enemy was systematically crippling his fleet without destroying a single ship. It was a level of technological sophistication that the Zaphirian Empire had never encountered before. "Signal all remaining ships to close formation and prepare for emergency jump to hyperspace. We're withdrawing from this system." But as the aliens attempted to flee, they discovered that their navigation computers had been compromised. Jump calculations that should have taken minutes now required hours of manual verification. Ships that tried to enter hyperspace found themselves thrown off course, emerging light years from their intended destinations. The Ghost Fleet had effectively trapped the Zaphirian force in the Proxima system, blind and deaf and unable to escape. Now they could only wait in growing terror for the arrival of the main human battle group. Admiral Foster received Captain Vasquez's final report as Terra's Fury dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Proxima system. Shadow Leader reports enemy fleet neutralized without civilian casualties. All Zaphirian vessels remain in system, but combat effectiveness reduced by approximately 70%. Foster studied the tactical displays showing the positions of both fleets. The Ghost Fleet had performed flawlessly, but the real test was yet to come. For the first time in decades, human military forces would face an alien enemy in open battle. "Signal all ships to assume battle formation," she ordered. "We're going in." The 12 new dreadnoughts moved into position at the center of the human formation, their weapon systems charging for combat. Around them, 37 battleships and 64 cruisers arranged themselves in the complex patterns that decades of training had made second nature. To Zaphirian sensors, the human fleet appeared to be a conventional naval force of impressive size but unremarkable technology. The ships looked like upgraded versions of vessels that had been observed in human space for years. There was nothing to suggest the revolutionary advances hidden within their hulls. War Commander Thexka received sensor reports of the approaching human fleet with a mixture of relief and apprehension. Relief, because he would finally face an enemy he could see and target. Apprehension, because the human force was larger than his intelligence reports had suggested possible. 17 ships still operational, Commander, his tactical officer reported. But most of our communication and navigation systems remain offline. "Signal the fleet to prepare for battle," Thexka ordered. "Whatever technology the humans used to disable our systems, it won't help them in a direct engagement. Zaphirian weapons and armor are still superior to anything they possess." The two fleets approached each other across the vast distances of space, neither side certain of what the next few hours would bring. But Admiral Foster had one critical advantage that the Zaphirian commander could not have imagined. For 30 years, humanity had been preparing for exactly this moment. Every ship in her fleet carried weapons that existed nowhere else in the galaxy. Every officer had trained for years on tactical scenarios designed around facing a technologically advanced enemy. Every piece of equipment had been tested and refined. with one goal in mind: ensuring that no alien empire would ever again threaten human lives with impunity. The Zaphirians had made their first mistake when they destroyed New Eden. They were about to discover the consequences of that decision. "All ships, this is Admiral Foster," she transmitted to her fleet. "Today we fight not for territory or resources, but for the memory of 3 million innocent people who died simply because they were human. The enemy has shown no mercy and deserves none in return. Attack formation. Engage at will." The Battle of Proxima was about to begin, and with it, the galaxy would learn what happened when humanity went to war. The first shots of the Battle of Proxima came from the Zaphirian fleet, their energy weapons reaching across space to strike at what they believed to be an inferior enemy. Brilliant beams of concentrated plasma lanced toward the human ships, weapons that had conquered dozens of worlds and destroyed entire civilizations. The energy blasts struck the leading human vessels and simply vanished, absorbed by defensive systems that the Zaphirians had never encountered before. The dreadnought Terra's Fury took a direct hit from the enemy flagship's main cannon, a weapon capable of vaporizing a city, and showed no damage whatsoever. War Commander Thekska stared at his tactical displays in disbelief. Impossible. Those were direct hits with full power. His weapons officer double-checked the firing solutions and power readings. "All systems functioned normally, Commander. The energy output was within expected parameters, but the human ships absorbed the bite. Attacks as if they had never been fired." On the bridge of Terra's Fury, Admiral Foster watched the enemy weapons dissipate harmlessly against her ship's defensive screens. The new shield technology was one of humanity's greatest breakthroughs. Energy barriers that could absorb and redirect any known form of attack. The Zaphirians were fighting with weapons from the previous generation, while humans had moved decades ahead. "All ships, return fire," Foster ordered calmly. "Show them what real weapons look like." The human response was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Instead of the crude energy weapons used by most civilizations, the human ships fired streams of accelerated particles that moved at significant fractions of light speed. The kinetic projectiles struck Zaphirian vessels with the force of nuclear explosions, punching through their armor as if it were paper. The destroyer Sekthra, already crippled by Ghost Fleet attacks, was the first to die. A single projectile from the human cruiser, Relentless, struck its engine compartment, and the alien ship simply disintegrated, torn apart by forces that overwhelmed every safety system and structural support. 3 more Zaphirian vessels followed. Within seconds, their crews having no time to understand what was happening before their ships were reduced to expanding clouds of debris. The aliens had never faced weapons that could deliver such devastating kinetic energy with pinpoint accuracy across millions of kilometers. "Evasive maneuvers!" Thekska shouted, but his remaining ships were still struggling with navigation systems damaged by the Ghost Fleet's earlier attacks. They moved like wounded animals, their formations scattered and their responses uncoordinated. Admiral Foster studied the battle with professional detachment. The Zaphirians were fighting bravely, but they were using tactics and technology that humanity had surpassed years ago. It was like watching ancient warriors with swords and shields trying to fight modern soldiers armed with rifles. "Target their command ship," she ordered her weapons officer. "I want to send a message that the entire Zaphirian Empire will understand." The Terra's Fury's main cannon was a masterpiece of human engineering, capable of accelerating a projectile to 12% of light speed and directing it with computer-guided precision. The weapon had never been fired in combat, but its designers had calculated that it could penetrate any known defensive system. The projectile struck Thekska's flagship amidships, passing completely through the vessel and continuing into space, beyond. For a moment, the ship appeared undamaged. Then the delayed effects of the kinetic impact reached critical systems throughout the hull. The flagship broke apart in slow motion, its structure failing as energy from the impact propagated through every deck and compartment. Emergency systems activated too late to save the crew, and the pride of the Zaphirian fleet became another expanding cloud of wreckage. War Commander Thexka had exactly enough time to realize that his intelligence reports had been catastrophically wrong before the command deck exploded around him. His last thought was that the humans were not the weak, peaceful species his empire had believed them to be. The destruction of the command ship threw the remaining Zaphirian vessels into complete chaos. Without central coordination and with their communication systems still compromised, individual captains began making their own decisions about whether to fight or flee. Most chose to flee, but found that the human fleet had surrounded them while they were focused on the frontal assault. Ships that tried to escape toward the edge of the system encountered the Ghost Fleet, still invisible, but now attacking with full lethal force. Captain Vasquez watched from Shadow's edge as the Battle of Proxima turned into a rout. The Zaphirians had brought 32 ships to murder 2 million civilians. Now they had less than a dozen vessels still capable of fighting, and those were being systematically eliminated by human forces that seemed to anticipate their every move. Admiral Foster to Shadow Leader, came the transmission from the main fleet. Excellent work with the preliminary operations. Any survivors attempting to leave the system? Negative, Admiral. We have the escape routes covered. None of them are getting away. That was crucial to the overall strategy. This battle was not just about saving Proxima Colony. It was about sending a message to the Zaphirian Empire and any other species that might consider following their example. The message was simple. Attacking human civilians would result in the complete destruction of the attacking force. The last Zaphirian ship was destroyed 47 minutes after the battle began. The cruiser Velkaran, already damaged and with most of its crew dead, made a final desperate charge toward the human line. It was met by concentrated fire from 6 different vessels and vaporized instantly. Admiral Foster stood on the bridge, of Terra's fury as the tactical displays cleared of enemy contacts. Around her, the crew maintained professional composure, but she could sense their satisfaction. For years, they had trained for this moment, wondering if they would ever have the chance to test their skills against a real enemy. Now they knew. Human military technology was not just superior to anything the Zaphirians possessed. It was so far advanced that the battle had been more of a demonstration than a real fight. Casualty report, Foster requested. 0 human casualties, Admiral, Captain Morrison replied. Minor damage to 3 ships, all systems operational. The enemy force has been completely eliminated. 0 casualties. 32 alien warships destroyed without the loss of a single human life. It was the kind of victory that military historians would study for centuries. But Foster felt no satisfaction. The real victory would come when the Zaphirian Empire learned to leave human space alone. Signal all ships to assume defensive positions around Proxima Colony. And get me a communication channel to Earth Command. It's time to let the Zaphirians know exactly what they've started. The message that went out from Proxima traveled through hyperspace to every corner of human space and beyond. It was transmitted on frequencies used by dozens of species, in languages understood throughout the galaxy. The content was simple, direct, and designed to ensure that no civilization would misunderstand humanity's new position in galactic affairs. This is Admiral Janet Foster of the Human Defense Force, speaking from the Proxima system. 32 Zaphirian warships attempted to attack our colony here. All enemy vessels have been destroyed. 0 human casualties were sustained in the engagement. Let this serve as notice to the Zaphirian Empire and any other power that might consider similar actions. Humanity will no longer tolerate attacks on our civilians. Any force that threatens human lives will face immediate and overwhelming retaliation. We have tried to live in peace with our neighbors, but we are fully prepared for war if that is what others choose. The massacre at New Eden will not be repeated. We are coming for those responsible, and we will not stop until justice is done. The message reached Zaphirian space 3 days later, where it was received by Imperial Command with a mixture of disbelief and growing alarm. 32 warships destroyed by an enemy they had dismissed as technologically inferior? It was impossible, unless their intelligence about humanity had been completely wrong. Supreme War Leader Keth Var called an emergency session of the Imperial Military Council. The old warrior had led the Empire's expansion for 20 years, conquering system after system through superior technology and ruthless tactics. He had never encountered a species capable of matching Zaphirian military might. Confirm the destruction of War Commander Thexka's fleet, he ordered his intelligence staff. Confirmed, Supreme Leader. Long-range sensors detected the debris field at Proxima. No Zaphirian ships survived the engagement. Kethvar studied the tactical reports with growing unease. The humans had not just won the battle, they had dominated it completely. Advanced weapons, superior defensive systems, and tactics that suggested decades of military preparation. This was not the peaceful species described in their intelligence files. What is the current strength of human military forces? He asked. Unknown, Supreme Leader. Our previous assessments may have been based on incomplete information. The weapons observed at Proxima are of unknown design and capability far exceeding our projections. The implications were staggering. If humanity possessed military technology superior to the Empire's, then the entire expansion campaign was at risk. Worse, if they had been concealing their capabilities for years, it suggested a level of strategic planning that the Empire had never encountered before. Orders, Supreme Leader? Asked Fleet Marshal Kekstry, commander of the Empire's largest battle group. Kethvar considered his options. The Empire could withdraw from human space and accept the loss of New Eden as a costly mistake. Or they could escalate the conflict, committing more forces in an attempt to crush humanity before their true strength could be fully deployed. The decision was made easier by the nature of Zaphirian society. The Empire had been built on conquest and expansion. To retreat in the face of human resistance would be seen as weakness, encouraging other species to challenge imperial authority. The Empire's credibility depended on its reputation for invincibility. Mobilize the 3rd and 5th fleets, Kethvar ordered. 200 ships should be sufficient to deal with whatever advantages the humans believe they possess. And send word to our allies in the hegemony. It's time to test this new human military capability against overwhelming force. The orders went out across Zaphirian space, calling up reserve fleets and activating alliance agreements with species that had benefited from imperial expansion. Within weeks, the largest military force in that region of the galaxy would be assembled, for a single purpose: the complete destruction of human civilization. But as the Zaphirian Empire prepared for total war, they remained unaware of humanity's greatest advantage. Everything they had seen at Proxima, the advanced weapons, the defensive systems, the tactical superiority, represented only a small fraction of what humans were actually capable of. Admiral Foster stood in the command center of Terra's fury as reports arrived from Earth about Zaphirian military mobilization. Intelligence indicated that the aliens were preparing a force of unprecedented size, drawing ships from across their empire for what they clearly intended as a final assault on human space. They're taking the bait, Captain Morrison observed, studying the enemy fleet compositions. Good, Foster replied. Let them bring everything they have. It's time to show the galaxy what happens when you threaten human lives. She activated the quantum communication system that linked her directly to Earth Command. This is Admiral Foster requesting implementation of Protocol 7. The enemy is mobilizing for total war. I recommend we give them exactly what they're asking for. The response came back within minutes. Protocol 7 authorized. All assets are at your disposal, Admiral. Show them why humanity survived to reach the stars. Protocol 7. The final contingency plan that had been developed. In the deepest secrecy, known only to a handful of military leaders and government officials. It was humanity's ultimate response to an existential threat. The complete mobilization of military capabilities that had been hidden from the galaxy for decades. Across human space, automated systems began activating weapons platforms that officially did not exist. Ships that had been disguised as commercial vessels revealed their true nature as advanced warships. Space stations that appeared to be research facilities opened hidden bays containing fleets of unmanned fighters. The Zaphirian Empire thought they were preparing to fight a young species with limited military experience. Instead, they were about to face the full might of humanity unleashed for the first time in its history. The real war was about to begin. The Zaphirian Armada that assembled at the edge of human space was the largest military force the Empire had ever deployed. 237 warships from across their territories, supported by allied fleets from 6 different species that had joined the expansion campaign. Supreme War Leader Kethvar commanded the force personally from his flagship, the massive dreadnought Eternal Conquest. Intelligence reports indicated that humanity had perhaps 50 major warships scattered across their territory, even accounting. For the advanced technology observed at Proxima, the numerical advantage should be overwhelming. No species in the galaxy could withstand an assault of this magnitude. Kethvar studied the tactical displays showing human space spread out before his fleet. 17 major colonies, dozens of smaller settlements, and Earth itself at the center of their small empire. He would destroy them systematically, ensuring that no human survived to threaten Imperial expansion ever again. "Begin the advance," he ordered. "Target the outer colonies first. When we have eliminated their defensive forces, we will proceed to their home system and finish what we started at New Eden." The massive fleet moved into human space in perfect formation, their ships darkening the stars as they advanced toward their first target. Admiral Foster watched them come from the command center of Terra's Fury, now positioned at the heart of humanity's response. Around her ship, the true strength of human military power was finally being revealed. The Ghost Fleet had grown from 47 vessels to over 300 as hidden shipyards released their secret products. The 12 dreadnoughts were now accompanied by 38 more that had been constructed in underground facilities throughout the solar system. But even those numbers paled beside Protocol 7's full implementation. Automated manufacturing. Systems throughout human space had been producing unmanned warships for years, stockpiling them in hidden depots against exactly this kind of threat. Now those depots were emptying, releasing swarms of AI-controlled fighters and cruisers that moved with inhuman precision. "Fleet status report," Foster requested. "All human forces now operational, Admiral," Captain Morrison replied. "Total strength. 87 manned capital ships, 312 stealth vessels, and 2,400 unmanned combat units. Long-range weapons platforms at Earth and Mars are fully charged and targeted." Foster nodded with satisfaction. The Zaphirians thought they were bringing overwhelming force to bear against a weak enemy. Instead, they were about to encounter the most advanced military technology in the galaxy, deployed by a species that had been preparing for this moment for decades. "Signal all units to assume attack positions. It's time to end this war." The first indication Supreme War Leader Kethvar had of trouble was when his forward scouts began disappearing. Ships on the edge of his formation simply vanished from sensors, their communication systems going silent without any distress signals or indications of combat. "Technical malfunction?" he asked his sensors officer, though the question felt familiar from reports he had received about the disaster at Proxima. "Unknown, Supreme Leader. All missing vessels were operating normally until they simply ceased to exist in our detection grid." Kethvar felt the same unease that had affected War Commander Thexka in his final hours. The humans were using some kind of stealth technology that rendered their ships invisible to Zaphirian sensors. His massive fleet was being stalked by an enemy they couldn't see or track. Increase sensor sweep intensity. Deploy screening formations to protect the main fleet, and signal all ships to prepare for immediate combat. But the orders came too late. The Ghost Fleet had already positioned itself throughout the Zaphirian formation, invisible ships surrounding the alien vessels like predators preparing to strike. When Admiral Foster gave the attack command, the results were devastating. 300 stealth ships opened fire simultaneously from point-blank range. Their weapons were designed for surgical precision. Each shot targeted critical systems like engines, weapons, and communication arrays. Within minutes, dozens of Zaphirian vessels found themselves crippled and defenseless, unable to fight or flee. The attacks continued with ruthless efficiency. Ships that had dominated star systems for decades were reduced to drifting hulks in seconds. The aliens fought back blindly, firing at empty space where their computers suggested enemies might be, but their weapons found only vacuum. Supreme War Leader Kethvar watched his fleet fall apart around him as invisible enemies struck from every direction. How many ships have we lost? 37 destroyed, 61 disabled, his tactical officer reported. But we still cannot locate the source of the attacks. The old warrior had fought in dozens of campaigns across the galaxy, but he had never encountered anything like this. An enemy that could strike without being seen, weapons that could cripple his most powerful ships with surgical precision. The humans were fighting with technology that seemed almost magical in its capabilities. Signal all ships to close formation and prepare for emergency jump to hyperspace, he ordered. We're withdrawing from this engagement. But as the Zaphirians attempted to retreat, they discovered that their escape routes had been cut off. Long-range sensors detected massive energy signatures throughout the system, weapons platforms that had been hidden until this moment, now powering up for combat. Admiral Foster smiled as she watched the enemy fleet's desperate attempts to flee. The orbital strike platforms around Earth and Mars had been humanity's ultimate defensive measure, weapons capable of engaging targets across interstellar distances. Now they were about to demonstrate their capabilities against the largest invasion force in galactic history. Fire, she ordered simply. The weapons platforms released their charges simultaneously, streams of accelerated particles that crossed the light years between Earth and the battle zone in minutes. The projectiles struck with pinpoint accuracy, each one targeted at a specific Zaphirian vessel. Ships that had survived the Ghost Fleet's attacks were vaporized instantly as kinetic energy equivalent to nuclear explosions tore through their hulls. The aliens had no defense against weapons that could strike from beyond the range of their sensors, no way to retaliate against enemies located in another star system entirely. Supreme War Leader Kethvar's flagship shuddered as a near miss from one of the long-range strikes overloaded its defensive systems. Around him, the pride of the Zaphirian Empire was being systematically destroyed by an enemy that seemed to possess unlimited technological advantages. Supreme Leader, we're receiving a transmission from the human fleet, his communications officer reported. Put it through, Kethvar ordered, though he dreaded what he was about to hear. Admiral Foster's voice filled the bridge of the eternal conquest, calm and professional, despite the carnage surrounding both fleets. This is Admiral Foster of the Human Defense Force. You are Supreme War Leader Kethvar, I presume. I am, the Zaphirian commander replied, his pride warring with the growing realization that his situation was hopeless. Good. I want you to understand exactly what is happening here. Your empire made the mistake of attacking human civilians. 3 million innocent people died at New Eden because your species believes that might makes right. Today you learn the consequences of that philosophy. Kethvar studied his tactical displays as more ships died around him. You have superior technology. We acknowledge your victory. What are your terms for surrender? Surrender? Foster's voice carried a note of cold amusement. You misunderstand the situation. This isn't about surrender or terms. This is about justice, Your empire has shown that it views other species as nothing more than obstacles to expansion. Today, you become the obstacle. The attack resumed with even greater intensity. The Ghost Fleet emerged from stealth to reveal ships of impossible size and capability, their hulls gleaming with weapons that could devastate entire worlds. The unmanned combat units swarmed through the Zaphirian formation like angry insects, their AI minds calculating the most efficient methods of destruction. But it was the arrival of humanity's main battle fleet that truly demonstrated the futility of Zaphirian resistance. 87 capital ships dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation, their weapon systems charging with energies that made space itself ripple with distortion. These were not the crude vessels that had fought at Proxima. These were humanity's ultimate expression of military power, ships designed to fight and win against any conceivable enemy. Their armor could withstand the combined firepower of entire fleets. Their weapons could crack planets or surgically remove individual targets with equal precision. Supreme War Leader Kethvar realized that everything his empire believed about warfare had become obsolete in the face of human technology. They were fighting with weapons from the past against an enemy that had mastered the science of the future. "All ships, this is Supreme Leader Kethvar," he transmitted to what remained of his fleet. "We have encountered an enemy beyond our capability to defeat. Signal surrender to all human forces and prepare to receive their terms." But Admiral Foster was not interested in surrender. She had spent months watching intelligence reports of Zaphirian expansion, reading about worlds conquered and species enslaved. The Empire had built its power on the suffering of others, and now they would learn what it felt like to be on the receiving end of overwhelming force. "Target their command ship," she ordered. "I want to send a message that will be heard throughout their empire." The Terra's Fury's main cannon had been upgraded since Proxima. Its power increased to levels that strained the laws of physics. The projectile it fired at the Eternal Conquest moved at nearly 20% of light speed, carrying kinetic energy equivalent to a small star going supernova. The Zaphirian flagship simply ceased to exist. One moment it was there, broadcasting surrender signals and preparing to negotiate terms. The next moment, it was an expanding cloud of plasma that had once been the most powerful warship in the Empire. Supreme War Leader Kethvar died without knowing what had hit him. His final transmission cut off in mid-word as human weapons demonstrated their absolute superiority over everything the aliens had brought to the battle. The destruction of the command ship broke the remaining Zaphirian forces completely. Ships that had fought bravely for their empire now fled in panic, their crews abandoning military discipline in favor of individual survival. But there was no escape from the human response. Admiral Foster had prepared for this moment carefully. Every alien vessel in the battle zone was tracked and targeted. Ships that tried to flee found themselves pursued by unmanned fighters that could follow them through hyperspace. Vessels that attempted to hide were located by sensors that could detect a single atom of alien metal across light years of space. The Battle of the Frontier lasted 7 hours and resulted in the complete annihilation of the largest military force the Zaphirian Empire had ever assembled. 237 warships, along with their allied vessels, were reduced to debris and scattered atoms. Not a single alien survived to report what they had witnessed. When it was over, Admiral Foster stood on the bridge of Terra's Fury and surveyed the aftermath of humanity's first true military victory. Around her ship, the wreckage of an empire's ambitions drifted in the darkness of space. The message had been sent clearly. Humanity would no longer tolerate aggression against its people. "Signal all ships to begin Phase 2 operations," she ordered. "It's time to take this war to the Zaphirian home systems." Phase 2 was the part of Protocol 7 that even Admiral Foster had hoped would never be necessary. But the aliens had chosen genocide as their opening move, and humans had learned long ago that some crimes could only be answered with overwhelming force. The fleet that departed human space was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Hundreds of ships moving in perfect coordination, their destination the heart of the Zaphirian Empire itself. They carried weapons capable of sterilizing worlds and the absolute determination to use them if necessary. News of the fleet's destruction reached Zaphirian High Command 6 days later. The reaction was immediate and predictable: panic, disbelief, and desperate attempts to mobilize additional forces to defend the Empire's core systems. But it was already too late. Human ships were moving through Zaphirian space like a plague, striking military targets with surgical precision while leaving civilian populations untouched. The message was clear: surrender now, or face the complete destruction of your military capabilities. The war that the Zaphirian Empire had started with the massacre at New Eden ended 3 months later with the unconditional surrender of all Imperial forces. The surviving alien leaders were forced to sign treaties that guaranteed the independence of every species they had conquered and paid reparations that would take centuries to complete. More importantly, they were required to spread the word throughout the galaxy about what had happened when they chose to attack humanity. The story of New Eden and the war that followed became a cautionary tale told in every star system, a reminder that some species were best left in peace. Admiral Foster returned to Earth as humanity's greatest military hero, but she took no pleasure in the victory. 3 million people had died at New Eden, and no amount of alien surrenders could bring them back. The war had been necessary, but it had also revealed capabilities that humans had hoped never to use. In the years that followed, humanity emerged as the dominant military power in their region of the galaxy. Other species approached them with respect and caution, aware that the peaceful farmers and scientists they had once dismissed possessed weapons that could end civilizations. The colonies grew and prospered under the protection of the Human Defense Force. New settlements were established on worlds throughout the frontier, each one defended by technology that made invasion impossible. Children grew up knowing that their safety was guaranteed by the overwhelming superiority of human military power. And in the wheat fields of New Eden, now growing wild without human tenders, the wind whispered through empty cities where 3 million people had once lived and dreamed of peaceful futures among the stars. Their deaths had not been in vain. They had awakened humanity to its true potential and ensured that no other colony would suffer the same fate. The galaxy had learned the most important lesson in human history. Attacking human civilians was not just wrong, it was fatal. The Armada of Wrath had fallen upon those who made that mistake, and their example would discourage aggression for generations to come.